talking about pharmacy news, things going on behind the counter. We'll start with some good news. SIBO has officially been given codes in the ICD-11. If you've been diagnosed with SIBO but struggled to get medication or further testing because insurance doesn't cover it, you should probably go try again. The International Classification of Diseases, or ICD, is a massive collection of alphanumeric codes for every possible disease, injury, complication, and more. Doctors, hospitals, researchers, they all use this database, these codes, to make sure that they're talking about the same thing. Insurers use these codes as well, and when covering things doctors prescribe, but if your diagnosis doesn't have an ICD code, the insurance company probably isn't going to cover whatever the treatment is that the doctor is looking for. For years, that's been the case for SIBO. That's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. If you're curious, you can go listen to episode 2 of this show. We did a whole big thing on it.
Wow, it was way back.
It was.
That was way back.
That was over 30 episodes ago. If your doctor has diagnosed you with IBS, there are certain treatments that they would cover. But if the doctor said SIBO, well, the insurance just wasn't going to cover that because there wasn't a code for it. So now that it has been updated and there is actually a code, it might be worth going to try and get that all covered again. Very exciting stuff.
We should revisit SIBO soon.
Yeah. We can do that in the new year, especially. That's a good idea.
New year, new SIBO.
Oh, no.
New
that
SIBO.
sounds terrible.
New SIBO research?
Yeah, there
New
you go.
SIBO.
There you go.
New year, no SIBO.
I like that even better. This next story, we had something else lined up, but when we started talking about this in the office in a pre-production meeting, it got to be a really fun conversation, so we thought we'd share it with you guys.
Yeah, we were fighting.
We did. We scrapped. If you see the black eye that I gave Dante, it was over this. A major national healthcare provider made headlines recently, unintentionally, when they notified parents of an update to their app. Employees of Atrium Health Services were notified that their access to the pharmacy records of their children, ages 12 to 17, would be revoked. Atrium Health said the move, quote, allows minors to receive prescription medication for sensitive issues as permitted by law without worrying about how their parents may react, unquote. Upon further research, it became clear that they were referring to legislation from the 1970s in North Carolina that gives minors the right to consent to certain specific medical treatments without parental consent. There are laws like this in lots and lots of states. Those treatments were limited to things like birth control, STDs, psychiatric care, and substance abuse care. Why Atrium Health has suddenly decided to limit parents' access to all pharmaceutical records is at this point unanswered. I did a little more digging, and it looks like this particular law comes into the spotlight every few years. Mm-hmm. In January of 2022, so just a couple years ago, I found another article about a mom being refused a drug test for her minor daughter, that she wanted to have her daughter drug tested, and they said, without the child's consent, we can't do that. It was interesting. So it seems like this is kind of a clickbaity, rage farming sort of topic that comes up every once in a while.
Yeah.
But because it brought up a fun conversation, I thought it would be fun for us to talk about it on a more philosophical level. You had an interesting reaction to this. I got angry immediately, and you didn't. Mm-hmm. Why was that?
Yeah, at my first reaction, it was interesting because it made me think of children, teenagers who are maybe afraid to talk about certain subjects with their parents, specifically, various controversial medical issues.
Yeah.
And so again, just at first reaction, not that this is my full tilt belief in it.
Right.
It's just, it was kind of nice thinking about, oh, wow, there is some potential advocacy for children, for teenagers who just don't have the most open lines of communication, don't have the same beliefs potentially as their parents.
Sure.
And so having this level of privacy, even though maybe their decision-making skills, their knowledge base, all that sort of thing, even though maybe it's not as developed as a 18, 25-year-old, something like that.
That is definitely true.
It just was interesting, again, like you're saying, that was my first reaction.
Right. Mm-hmm. I got immediately angry because that's what I do. But no, it was a fun conversation because from there we started talking and I said, okay, well, what about the parental rights element of this?
Mhm.
You know, the whole point, the reason my child can't get a tattoo, the reason my child can't smoke cigarettes or buy alcohol is because we all kind of universally agreed that where that line might be changes from person to person. As a society, we've kind of generally agreed that it's 18 years old.
Mhm.
That's when you're an adult. That's when you can make adult decisions
Sure.
for the most part. But if I'm responsible for my child's well-being and care, why in the world would I not be given access to their medical records? That's a pretty fundamental thing. And again, we want to stress, this is a relatively small group of folks. These were all employees of a single hospital network, you know, and folks that live in North Carolina. There are other laws similar to it in other states, but it's just an interesting thought conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I understand wanting to, you know, the substance abuse thing is a perfect example. If a minor is going to seek treatment for substance abuse and they don't want their parents to know because they don't want to deal with that, they just want to get the help and move on. I get that. And that's a positive thing, but shouldn't a parent have access to all of the medical records of their child?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what if, you know, we can take this apart with 1,000 different what ifs, but
Sure.
psychiatric medications, those have black box warnings. Those have significant potential complications in certain people.
Mm-hmm.
If I, as your parent, don't even know that you're on those,
Sure.
like that could be a problem. I can't watch for side effect profiles that I don't know that you're taking those medications, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that parents should never have access to their child's records? No, you didn't say that. No, no.
No, it again, it's to me a lot of these thoughts that I have around such heated topics like
Yes,
this, such debatable topics. My reaction is more just reactively considering the flip side before I dive into, oh my goodness, this is how I feel. This is bad. The world is going to hell in a handbasket. Like,
right.
Before I go there, it's like, all right, what if we spun this? Like, is this really that bad? Because our tendency is still really to jump on the heated aspects of health privacy.
Yeah.
You know what we're trying to say.
I do. And
yes,
you have a wonderful capacity to see things from multiple sides and kind of hold an idea loosely.
Mm-hmm. To a fault sometimes.
I don't do that at all, ever. I make up my mind. You're laughing over there.
I am.
Are you laughing because I have made up my mind?
No. I agree with your perspective of Dante, and
what do you think about?
And I'll ride the third mic back here behind the sound console.
You don't want to jump in on this? You got kids.
Yeah. Well, I think Dante's perspective is one that's he's recalling his parental guidance at a young age.
Yeah.
But also at this stage of life doesn't have children.
Yes, that's true.
And so I think there's probably a lot of people who have different perspectives or opinions about this based on their life.
Yep.
Their current life situation or life journey, those types of things. So, yeah, I mean, it's a surprise, but it's no surprise. Yeah. I mean, it's a surprise, but it's no surprise. I think, like a lot of the comments and stuff that I'm reading on some of these articles that are posted, they're, saying a similar thing, a lot of the people that are commenting on here probably don't have children, like,
right.
and that shows like what ignorance and all this stuff. And it's like, well, I mean, no. And the other thing I think that is interesting to highlight too is, one of the questions on here, which I had, and Dante, you would be able to kind of weigh in on this a little bit, is someone asked if a child is on their parents' insurance, wouldn't the parent know about the prescriptions? And they say no, because everything's sent electronically.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can log in, but you can't see any of that. They could change providers and you wouldn't even know that. But you're driving them to the appointment because they don't have a license, because 16 years old
not necessarily
12 years old.
Well, you can get an Uber. Or somebody could get one for you. A friend could take you.
Yeah, I suppose.
There's all kinds of situations. But aside from that, I mean, because we can really turn this into all kinds of conspiracy theories and things like that. This is an old law. This is from the 1970s.
That's what somebody commented.
Yeah.
They're like, is this even a headline? This is
Yeah.
a 70s. This is from the 1970s. Why is this even a headline?
Because it comes up every couple of years and it makes for good clickbaity titles and stuff. And it is interesting. But
Yeah. The one part that came to my mind in reflecting on this a bit more is it seems like, at least I don't have this answer,
Right.
but we jump to 16 is when you get your license. 18 is when you can buy tobacco products. 18 is when you can do X or Y.
Yeah.
It is the best guess.
Yeah.
They're the best guesses that we have as far as somebody being mature enough, somebody having the adequate ability to make certain decisions. So it's still that's still something that I would imagine really falls on a range.
Yes.
You
for
know,
sure.
there very well may be freshmen in high school who potentially have a greater capacity to think about a given health issue, let's say in this context, than some 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. So it's like, so my mind jumps to, okay, what if we just look at this on an individual by individual basis? It's just the premise, like my argument against you for example, the other day is just that the premise is flawed. Like, I don't really buy into the fact that 18 means anything anyway.
100%.
It's not like when our kids turn 18, it's like, well, then I don't have the right to know what you're taking. Your 18-year-old could be a goofball for
100%.
all intents and purposes.
I know some 45-year-olds that do not need to be picking their own medications.
And so it's that color on the conversation that's like, okay, 12, in my logical mind, a 12-year-old making a big decision on maybe starting a new medication that they don't want to involve their guardians in seems like a much bigger deal than an 18-year-old.
Sure.
But what about
17-year-old,
what about 17-year-old? What about everybody in the middle? It's just that there are certainly
we have to draw a line somewhere as a society. And so that's just where we've chosen to draw it for whatever reason. But yeah, there's gradients and there's different levels of this. But I think the issue that scares me and scares other parents is the complete shutdown of access to all pharmaceutical records. That was shocking.
Yeah. And I just, what I don't like is when people like fearmonger.
Yeah. Which is what this article was about.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so, like we vaguely touched on, there are a lot of other health things, currently going on, and changes to age and all of these things. And you hear some of these stories and it's like, well, I don't want to be locked out completely. And then what if they take my child away from me? And the spiral goes.
Sure.
Yep.
And if I'm going to be that guy, the Bible talks very clearly on not having a spirit of fear.
Yep.
And amongst a lot of other very beneficial, life-giving things.
Yeah.
And so I don't buy into a lot of the fear mongering. Should we be aware of this? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we should also not be afraid, as parents. And I'm not saying that you are, we
100%.
and we also shouldn't be surprised, as the world, again, if we're living with a biblical worldview, or you're looking through the lens of Scripture, some of this is no surprise, but can be alarming. So
the conclusion that I came to upon further thought after we talked, I went for a long walk and I just kept thinking about it. And what I finally realized was, I think, as with so many things, a problem in this case, getting your access to your kids' pharmaceutical records shut down. A problem is just an opportunity with work clothes on, right? It's an opportunity if you're willing to put in the work. And I think the opportunity here is a chance to double down on your child learning that they can trust you, and that these lines of communication might be awkward and uncomfortable, but that just assuming that you're going to know everything doesn't work, because it's not like prior to the 1970s, kids never hid things from their parents.
Sure.
Right.
And it's not like just because, obviously there's a million stories now we can find about kids getting access to all sorts of intense pharmaceuticals that they didn't get on any legal basis, and there's nobody watching what they're doing. So that's all true. This is an opportunity and a reminder, as far as I can tell, that that the best path is not to trust that the government's going to get me access or the health insurance companies are going to get me access, but that I have to develop an intimate relationship with my child who knows that they can trust me no matter what the situation is, no matter what the challenge is. They can be honest with me, and it might be awkward and uncomfortable and not fun, but that we're both going to tackle the problem together instead of tackling each other.
Yep.
And that's what this really felt like, is it almost pits scared kids against scared parents.
It does.
And that's not helpful for anybody. Any other thoughts?
I mean, there's a lot of thoughts, but I think you guys summed it up perfectly. It's an opportunity more than it is something to, get all hopped up about.
And, and can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
And even in Dante's current situation, like just big role model in niece and nephew's lives, like having that family unit. So like maybe there's not as much comfortability coming to the parents, but to the brother, the uncle, this. Yeah. And then, then it's up to the uncle to say like, oh, you should encourage, hey, talk to your mom, your dad about this. Like this is important.
That's one of the things when we gave our kids cell phones, they never got cell phones until they were 14, I think. What we put in them before I handed them the phone was I put phone numbers for half a dozen adult friends of the same gender as them and said, these are people that your mom and dad trust, that have all agreed to talk to you anytime you want, that will not tell us anything we don't need to know. So if you need somebody to talk to that's not your mom or dad, these are people you can trust.
Yeah.
And you get to be that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. The network, there is a great advantage to working with a bigger network if possible.
We're not supposed to do it alone. We're not.